It's week 2 of Sean Diddy Combs' racketeering, sex trafficking, and prostitution trial out in federal court, and we are finally getting a look at some of the evidence that the Southern District of New York prosecutors are using to try to convict the one-time music mogul. We're digging into some of the exhibits that were seen in court as the prosecution tries to weave a story of deception, coercion, and abuse, while the defense tries to take it all apart. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is another Law&Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. That's right, Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients weren't properly warned about this risk. It's free to check, takes just a few minutes, and you don't pay unless they win. So scan the QR code on screen, click the link below, or head over to forthepeople.com/LCDepo to see if you qualify. Rapper and music industry titan Sean Diddy Combs is back in a Manhattan courthouse today, hearing evidence and testimony that prosecutors say proves he committed 3 specific crimes: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. And the government claims that Combs was running a criminal enterprise that was required to do things to satisfy his sexual pleasures, that he was using the resources of his businesses, his employees, to not only commit crimes, but also cover them up. These were things like setting up hotel rooms for so-called freak-offs, procuring drugs to be taken during these sex marathons, coordinating sex workers, covering up any allegedly illegal activities, and a lot more. Now, Cassandra Ventura Fine, better known as Cassie, spent several days on the stand last week as the government's star witness, alleged victim number 1 in this case. This is Combs' ex-girlfriend, and she went into absolutely graphic detail about not only the sexual abuse that she claims to have suffered at the hands of Sean Combs, but also provided testimony about beatings and threats, which we'll get more into in just a minute. Now, to be clear, Combs has always denied all of the charges, all of the allegations since he was indicted and arrested last fall. His defense team says that any sexual events may have been elaborate, they might have been kinky, they might have been weird, but they were all consensual. And any violence, yes, there were instances of domestic violence, but this is not sex trafficking. This is not racketeering. So now let's talk about the evidence, and I want to talk about some of the newest evidence that was released. Now, Law&Crime obtained photos that were displayed in court on Friday as the prosecution wrapped up week 1 of its case. And the government called Homeland Security Special Agent Yazin Binda to the stand. Now, she works with a human trafficking group within the agency. Special Agent Binda testified that after Combs was arrested at the Park Hyatt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan on September 16, 2024, she was part of a group that searched his hotel room, finding all sorts of things, apparently drugs, as well as lots of baby oil, which honestly has been one of the most memorable elements of this whole case. So when Homeland Security searched Combs' homes in Miami and Los Angeles in March of last year, months before he was arrested, prosecutors noted that they found hundreds of bottles of baby oil and lubricant throughout the homes, essential elements, I suppose, for freak-offs, right? Now, according to Special Agent Binda's testimony, only law enforcement was present during the search of this hotel room, which happened around 11:30 p.m. on September 16th. And among the items cataloged were a hard drive, a black fanny pack containing $9,000 in cash, a prescription bottle in the name of Frank Black, which appears to be one of the names that Sean Combs had used, and that allegedly at one time contained clonazepam, which is apparently used to treat everything from anxiety and panic disorders to psychosis. But there was also an evidence photo of 5 bottles of baby oil and lubricant sitting in the bathtub by the drain, as well as 2 more bottles of lubricant in the drawer of the nightstand. And they just kept finding it. There was also a Ziploc bag full of Johnson's baby oil bottles. And it kind of seems that Combs was always on the hunt for more lubricant, because take a look at this email, this short email, which was shown in court earlier in the week. It was sent to a member of his staff at midnight with a subject line of, "I need some baby oil and Astroglide," and then the sign off, "God bless Diddy." Now, as I mentioned, agents also found evidence of drugs in the Park Hyatt Hotel room too. There was also evidence photos shown of another prescription bottle, which agents say contained 2 bags of a pink powdery substance. In fact, in a court document, Combs' team seems to stipulate to the fact that drugs were found in Combs' hotel room during the search. According to that document, the substances were tested by a Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Customs and Border Protection laboratory. The document first talked about, quote, a clear plastic Ziploc bag containing pink solid material, which was found in an orange plastic prescription bottle. The pink solid material tested positive for ketamine. And ketamine came up during Cassandra Ventura Fine's testimony about a drug that maybe was used during the course of these freak-offs. And by the way, prosecution says these freak-offs were coerced. Now, the document also addressed, quote, a clear plastic Ziploc bag containing pink solid material, which was found in the same orange prescription bottle. The pink solid material tested positive for MDMA and ketamine. Now, this is all fascinating. Why? Because we know Combs had voluntarily come to New York, presumably to surrender himself to authorities, right? He knew he was going to be indicted. And didn't he have to know that he was going to be indicted regarding freak-offs? A major allegation being that he used drugs to keep victims compliant. After all, he must have known that Cassandra Ventura was cooperating with the government, and her allegations in her civil suit that she filed against him the year before talked about all this, contained all these allegations. So he had to know what he was going to be arrested for. And we know that drugs make up one of the underlying predicate crimes for racketeering conspiracy. And what happens? He allegedly shows up to New York with evidence of those crimes, with evidence of freak-offs? Really? And that helps the prosecution, right? Because it's not as if he's accused of criminal activity from 20 years ago. He is allegedly picked up in 2024 with the same materials, that he allegedly is still engaging in this activity to potentially support racketeering and sex trafficking charges. But then it was time for cross-examination. And defense attorney Tenny Garagos questioned how many of the items found actually pointed to a crime, arguing that having $9,000 in a fanny pack isn't illegal. Sure, could it potentially be used to be paying sex workers? Important for transportation to engage in prostitution, maybe important for sex trafficking, but freak-offs in and of themselves, not necessarily a crime, particularly sex trafficking or racketeering. But evidence and testimony has made it abundantly clear that Combs often had his staff set up freak-offs in hotel rooms, even bringing in things like mood lighting and cameras. Also, not illegal, but Cassie testified that she often felt she was being manipulated or coerced into participating in the sex acts with prostitutes. That would be illegal, not only because of threats that she said Combs made against her, but because he had so much control over her life and could make everything come tumbling down if he wanted to. Cassie testified that Combs threatened on multiple occasions to release videos of the freak-offs, even reportedly showing her that he still had videos that he said he deleted from his phone. So Ventura testified, he would mash me in my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head if I was down. When asked how frequently was Sean physical with you during your relationship, she responded, too frequently. And she was asked, were you ever injured as a result of these incidents? And she replied, yes. I would get knots in my forehead, busted lips, swollen lips, black eyes. The whites of my eyes would be red, bruises all over my body, just depending. There have been multiple witnesses who told the court, told the jury, that they saw Combs physically abusing Cassie. Dawn Richard, who was a member of the girl group Danity Kane, later a trio with Combs called Diddy Dirty Money, testified on Friday that she told Cassie to leave him after she saw Cassie's injuries. But Richard says she didn't want to get involved because she feared for her own safety. Cassie's former best friend, Kerry Morgan, also testified that she saw Combs being violent with Cassie on at least 2 separate occasions. Daniel Phillip, a man who says he was hired by Combs to have sex with Cassie, testified he saw Combs drag her into a room, then heard slapping sounds. This is all important because Cassie's testimony, combined with eyewitness testimony, fits into both the sex trafficking and racketeering aspects of the criminal indictment. Cassie's testimony that she was allegedly manipulated or coerced or forced into sex acts could constitute sex trafficking. Daniel Phillips' testimony, remember this is the alleged escort, suggests not only coerced sexual performances that Diddy directed, and he too testified to Combs allegedly abusing Cassie, but aside from potential sex trafficking, it also potentially helps transportation to engage in prostitution, right? The more testimony about sex workers and alleged victims being transported with the intent of prostitution, the more testimony of sex workers, that's important. And of course, violence sex trafficking, it all feeds into methods and means of the criminal enterprise and the underlying predicate crimes that the prosecution needs to prove for racketeering conspiracy, like sex trafficking is one of the underlying crimes. And then, of course, there is the tape, arguably one of the most impactful pieces of evidence in this case. The tape from the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles from back in 2016, this footage, when Combs could be seen on security video appearing to hit, kick, drag Cassandra Ventura fine, all while wearing only a towel and socks. Now, a portion of the video was originally published by CNN, and it really turned the tide of public opinion against him. Cassie says she was trying to leave a hotel after a freak-off, that Combs was trying to get her back to the hotel room. After a security guard intervened, she was able to leave. So this visual evidence is super, super key. Remember, because it shows force was allegedly used to maintain control over Cassie, that the video or the footage combined with other testimony about threats and career control, it could support the claim that Cassie could not leave, that she was trafficked under duress. There were allegations that Combs tried to bribe a security guard at the hotel from speaking up about this alleged attack. Bribery, again, one of the underlying predicate crimes of racketeering. The prosecution needs to prove 2 underlying predicate crimes for this charge. But Cassie also spoke about a time she was at her apartment to pack for a music festival when she fell asleep on the couch and awoke to Combs there screaming about how she was sleeping instead of packing like she was supposed to. She testified that 2 other people named Mia and Diane, they were also in the apartment and actually jumped on Combs' back because Cassie says he was trying to attack her. She claimed Combs threw her toward the bed. Quote, "Sean threw me onto the bed frame. What, if any, injuries did you had? I had a pretty significant gash on the side of my eyebrow." And there were some photos of these alleged injuries that were shown to the jury. We blurred the image that was shown to the jury, but, Cassie did appear to have this cut above her brow. She told the jury, "I didn't go to the ER or anything. It was a Sunday, and so nothing was open. Sean had security bring me to a plastic surgeon's office that opened up in Beverly Hills that Sunday to suture it." Now, of course, that goes to the idea of racketeering, having his staff, having his employees cover up alleged criminal activity. And it also speaks to Combs' power, his influence, his status to be able to do something like this, or allegedly do something like this. And the fact that a member of Combs' security, who Cassie identified as D-Rock, knew about the injury and didn't get the authorities involved, again, racketeering. According to Cassie, she now has a permanent scar on her eyebrow. This photo evidence not only supports Ventura's account, not only supports her credibility, not only corroborates her account, but why is the violence so important? Because the defense has suggested that this is evidence of domestic violence in a volatile relationship between Combs and Cassie. The prosecution has asserted that the violence shows that force or coercion was used to induce Cassie into these sexual episodes, these freak-offs, that if she didn't comply with Combs, look what could happen to her. She feared for her safety. Evidence of injuries would potentially support that. And again, I think it also goes to the means and methods by which Combs would use to further a criminal enterprise for purposes of the racketeering charge, that he used violence and threats of violence to cause alleged victims to do what he wanted. That seems to be a central argument for the prosecution. Now, in direct examination, Cassie also provided details about Combs allegedly threatening to release explicit videos of her. It all started, she says, when she was staying with Combs on a yacht to attend the Cannes Film Festival in France. And the government showed the jury a photo of Cassie from the red carpet of the event. According to her testimony, the night before she attended the festival, she and Combs got into an argument on the yacht. Quote, "We got into an argument. He actually was accusing me of taking drugs from him and kicked me off the boat with no shoes early one morning. I walked over to his staff's hotel and I stayed in somebody's room over there." And Cassie said that when she got kicked off the yacht, all of her belongings, including her passport, they were still with Combs. She says she walked the red carpet and then she and Combs attended the movie premiere along with his security. By the way, more mentions of security, handlers, assistants who saw or facilitated Combs' illegal activity, paramount to the racketeering charge. More specifically, when I say racketeering charge, I mean racketeering conspiracy, criminal agreement to further criminal activity. Combs didn't do it alone, right? The allegation is he was operating a criminal enterprise using his business, using his resources, using his employees to commit and conceal crimes. But listen to this, quote, "During the movie, we hadn't spoken. Sean and I hadn't spoken at all since the incident where he kicked me off the boat. So it was just getting evil glares. While we were sitting together during the movie, he would grab my leg and squeeze my thigh as tightly as he could. And I was wearing a beaded dress, so it was really painful, but nobody knew, just squeezing my leg." She told the jury that they flew back to New York on a commercial flight and that she had actually switched seats with somebody else so she wouldn't be seated next to Combs, but he still ended up sitting next to her. And right there, according to her, on what one could assume is a pretty packed flight, he allegedly showed Cassie freak-off videos. Here's a part of that testimony from the transcript. Quote, "He pulled up videos that I thought I had deleted, some freak-off videos out of his computer, like I thought I really deleted them out. He had them pulled up and was playing them for me on the flight back to New York. On what device was he playing them for you? On his laptop, one of his devices. Were there other people around you when he was playing the freak-off videos? Yeah. What did he say about the videos while he was playing them for you on the plane? That he was going to embarrass me and release them." And the testimony continued, "When Sean was playing freak-off videos for you on the plane, how did you feel?" "Couldn't have felt worse. Also scared. I just had got my passport back. I just felt trapped. Like, how do you get out of the situation when somebody's, felt trapped? When you landed in New York, what did you do?" "We landed in New York, ended up going to a dinner, and he wanted to have a freak-off, so we had a freak-off." "How soon after dinner did you have a freak-off?" "Right after." "How soon after landing in New York was dinner?" "Within a couple of hours, an hour or two." "Why did you do the freak-off?" "Honestly, at that point, whatever was going to make him not be angry at me and threatening me, I was willing to do. Yeah, I just didn't want to feel scared anymore, and one thing he made me feel like I was good at." "What concerns did you have if Sean was threatening you?" "That he could put these videos out and ruin everything for me, embarrass me, just make me out to be somebody that I'm not in a very unfair way." So here is Cassie allegedly threatening to release the videos. And threats play into this because if Diddy did use videos as blackmail to manipulate her or coerce her into participating in sex acts, that would constitute sex trafficking, right? And I think this is actually one of the more clear-cut examples that the prosecution may really want to focus on, because you have a travel element, you have a coercion, intimidation element, and then you have the freak-offs, this commercial sex act element. Now, the jury also saw evidence of Combs' apparent jealousy over Cassie's relationship at one point with Scott McGeough, also known as the musical artist Kid Cudi. So according to Cassie, Combs found out that she was apparently seeing Kid Cudi by apparently seeing an email between Cassie and one of his staff members. And on the stand, Cassie testified that Combs was livid, telling the court, "I just remember him putting a wine bottle opener between his fingers and lunging at me, just a whole, his eyes blacked out, super angry, and I just had to get out of there. It was actually another time I was able to get out of a freak-off." And Cassie said she left the hotel that she and Combs were staying in and stayed that night with Kid Cudi. And as she flew home to Connecticut for Christmas, she sent her mom a message about the threats. And in evidence, there's an email sent from one of Cassie's alias accounts, Veronica Bang, that she sent to, quote, "Mom new email just before Christmas in 2011. And the subject line is threats. Quote, "The threats have been made towards me by Sean Puffy Combs are that he is going to release 2 explicit sex tapes of me. One on Christmas Day, maybe before or right after, and another one sometime soon after that. He has also said that he will be having someone hurt me and Scott McGeough physically. He made a point that it wouldn't be by his hands. He actually said he'd be out of the country when it happened." And prosecutors allege that Combs actually blew up Kid Cudi's car in his driveway. Arson, that's one of the predicate acts that could help prove the racketeering charge. This allegation that Combs was instructing people to commit crimes at his beck and call. Will Kid Cudi take the stand? I don't know. The witness list hasn't been released. But again, the defense has characterized all of this as evidence of domestic violence in a turbulent relationship filled with anger, jealousy, love, that it doesn't amount to sex trafficking, that Combs didn't operate a criminal enterprise, that this is a stretch for prosecutors, and we shall see. It is still early on in the case. We have dedicated a bunch of sidebars to discussions about how high the burden is here for the prosecution to prove these crimes. It's not so straightforward, but at the same time, the prosecution has arguably established building blocks of the elements of these charges. Doesn't appear they have proved some of these definitively. At the same time, there are certain charges that maybe are a bit more straightforward. For transportation to engage in prostitution, if the jury accepts what they've heard so far, Cassie doing freak-offs in all different locations, being flown out, sex workers used, one being used in multiple cities, them getting paid transportation to engage in prostitution, right? Being allegedly beaten up in 2016 after a freak-off, dragged down the hall. Is that not using force, fraud, coercion for purposes of commercial sex acts? I talked about the plane incident being more of a straightforward argument for sex trafficking, but this is just some of the evidence so far and what we expect to be quite a long and elaborate case. A lot more to go. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.